with the IEEE BigMM workshop. So let us start the session. So as you recall, in the previous session, we have the three paper presented over there. And in this session, again, we are going to have three papers who are going to present it. So the first paper is a robust medical image watermarking framework based on SVD and DE in integer DCT domain. Second paper is on DRD-NET, diagnosis of diabetic retinotherapy using capsule network. And the third and the last paper of this workshop is a dilated convolutional approach for inflammatory lesion detection using multi-scale input feature fusion. So as I can see from the attendee list, so who is going to present the first paper? Who is the presenter for the first paper? I guess none of the authors are present in the attendee list. Okay, and who is going to present the second paper? The DRD-NET. So any author, Gaurav Kumar, Shravan Chatterjee or Chiranjit Chattopadhyay, who is going to present the second paper, 122?
Hi, Gaurav.
Hi, Chiranjit. So are you going to present?
No, I think my student Gaurav Kumar, he is supposed to join. Probably, if he could not join, I shall present.
No, I think he is there in the attendee list. Yeah, he is there. Okay, right, sure.
Okay. Then make him panelist and he shall present.
Hello.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, Gaurav. Okay.
Yes, sir. So I will present my paper, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And I think Nidhi is going to present the third paper.
Yeah, I will be presenting the paper and my presenter will also be there.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Also, let us start this session. Since none of the author of the first paper is appearing in the list, so let us take this first paper at the end of this particular session. So let me invite Mr. Gaurav Kumar to present the paper number 122, which is the DRD-NET, diagnosis of diabetic retinotherapy using capsule network. So Gaurav, over to you.
Yes, sir. Just 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
Hello.
Yeah, Gaurav, are you facing some issues?
Sir, actually, PPT sharing option is not visible, sir.
Okay, so can I request Gursimran to please enable the sharing option for Gaurav Kumar?
Yes, sir, I'm doing it. Just a second.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, can you check, sir? Is the option to share your screen is visible to you now? I've given you the privileges.
sir, visual, sir? Hello. Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
And sir, is PPT sir visible?
It is visible. Please start the presentation.
Yeah, sir. Actually, I would like to present my work on DRDNet, actually diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy using Capsule network. Okay. So, first of all, what is diabetic retinopathy? Diabetic retinopathy is a disease affecting the eye that caused by changes in the blood vessel of the retina. It occurs when the blood vessel in the eye begins to swell or leak. In some cases, new blood vessels may grow on the surface of the retina over the time. It may causing permanent vision loss. Actually, in this, the retina is inside the layer of the eye, and its main purpose is to transmit the light into vision. Diabetic affect the body by uh, constricting the blood vessels. When the blood vessels in the eye begins to constrict, it will begin to leak blood into the eye, into the vitreous humor, and lead to blindness. It is very difficult to treat if not properly screened. Actually, the factor that increase the likelihood of the diabetic retinopathy is basically poor blood sugar level over the time, and high blood pressure, high cholesterol level, and maybe in case of pregnancy. Motivation. Uh, Diabetic retinopathy, it is a time-consuming task as a patient has to start the visual acuity test. In this, diabetic is one of the very common disease worldwide. Diabetes trigger other type of illnesses like it affects other body organs like kidney, heart, and other body organs. And in visual acuity test, actually eye is diluted, due to which after the examination, close-up vision of patient may remains blurred for several hours. Actually, diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy required experienced clinical to identify the presence and significance of many small and important features, making this is a very time-consuming task. Automatic methods may reduce the time, cost, and effort significantly. Basically, there are two types of diabetic retinopathy. First one is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, and second one is proliferative diabetic retinopathy. In non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, it is the milder form of diabetic retinopathy. In other words, we can say that it is usually symptomless. Second one is proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Proliferative diabetic retinopathy is an advanced stage of diabetic retinopathy, and it refers to formation of new abnormal blood vessels on the surface of retina. Actually, proliferative diabetic retinopathy is further divided into four stages like mild, moderate, severe, and last one is PDR. Actually, in our case, diabetic retinopathy has five stages. First one is no DR. No DR means there's no symptom of diabetic retinopathy like no leakage in the blood vessels, uh, no growth of abnormal blood vessels, etc. Second one is mild proliferative diabetic retinopathy. In the mild proliferative diabetic retinopathy, blood vessels get swelled in the retina, and that causes some early leakage. In this stage, small red dots are spotted on the surface of the retina. Third one is moderate proliferative diabetic retinopathy. In second stage of diabetic retinopathy, some blood vessels that feed the retina are get blocked or leaked. At this stage, cotton wool spots are detected, and maybe it causing bleeding on, and bleeding can be seen. Fourth one is severe proliferative diabetic retinopathy. In this diabetic retinopathy, may blood vessels are being blocked due to the blood vessels not able to supply blood to the retina. At that time, added to the retina. That time the area of retina sends a signal to the body to grow new blood vessel to blood supply. Last one is proliferative diabetic retinopathy. It is the advanced stage of diabetic retinopathy. At this stage, new blood vessels are growing along the retina, and these blood vessels are abnormal blood vessels because of these are seen easy to leak, which causes blood or permanent vision loss. Actually, these are the various classes of stages of diabetic retinopathy in which you can see that class 0, class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. These are the stages of diabetic retinopathy, and these 5 are the sample images of each class. As we see that class 0 has no DR. Actually, images are very clear. We can easily see the retina and the blood vessels, and the rest of the classes we see some blood clots, some patches, and growth of abnormal growth of retinal veins. Related work. Actually, in this in this field there are lots of work already done. First one is convolution neural network for diabetic retinopathy. Mr. Pratt used CNN approach and CNN approach for 5 stages of DR. This achieve accuracy of 75%, and it uses a very simple CNN model. Second one is mobile assisted diabetic retinopathy detection using neural network. Sundial is developing a mobile app in which we can feed image into the smartphone, and it detects that if a person is suffering from diabetic retinopathy or not. And it achieves associate accuracy of 73.3%. Third one is deep learning for detection and severity classification of diabetic retinopathy. Jan adapt a pre-trained network like VDA16, VDA19, and Inception V3, and achieve the accuracy of 80.40%, in which VDA16 perform very well. Work. Actually, we use capsule network to classify our retinal images into their respective class. Actually, convolution neural networks are translation invariant. Translation invariant in the sense it predicts the object, but not predict the additional information, like if an object is shifted towards some angle, or if an object is shifted towards some like if an object is shifted towards left hand side or right hand side. It just identify that this is the image of eye, or this is an object, without telling us the shifting or other things, like translation equivariance, it is missing in CNN. So we use a capsule network. To identify or diagnose these stages of diabetic retinopathy. First of all, what is capsule? So basically, capsule is a small group of neurons where each neuron in a capsule represent various properties of a particular image part. Like if we consider a particular part of an image, then if we consider the following additional information like color, width, angle, height, etc. And basically, the general architecture of capsule network consists of basically 2 parts. First one is the encoder part, and second one is the decoder part. Actually, basically, encoder, it takes the image input and display the image as a vector that contains all instantaneous parameter needed to render the image. Render the image. Basically, encoder part consists of one is DigiCaps layer. Each has a set of 3 layers. Encoder part is at 3 layer, and also decoder part is at 3 fully connected layers. Encoder part it is basically 3 convolution layers and a fully connected layer, fully connected convolution layer. Basically, we first of all feed our image to convolution layer. We 32 plus 32 into 3, and then we use 256 9 cross 9 convolution kernel with slide is equals to 1 and ReLU activation. It's responsible for converting pixel entities to the activation of local feature detector, which are then feed to primary caps layer. The primary caps layer basically has 32 channels of convolutions, 80 capsules. Each has 8 convolution units with 9 cross 9 kernel and stride is equals to 2. The capsule applies basically architecture of our performer, in which we use input as a 32 plus 3 images. It is fed into a convolution layer of 256 9 cross 9 kernels, and activation is equal to ReLU, and then it fed into a primary capsule layer in which we have 8 plus 8 80 capsules. Then after that, the output of the primary cap is fed into DigiCaps layer, and these sections like input, convolution, primary, and DigiCaps. These are these three are encoder part, and rest of the like ReLU, fully connected with sigmoid. These are the decoder part of our dataset. We propose the framework is evaluated by performing experiments on following datasets like database calibration level 1. Second one is database calibration level 0. Steer is steer, drive, and method. We use basically we use focused on Aptos 19 dataset. We use 1265 images in which all images are likely balanced. We use training, validation, and testing, and in which the images are of different size. So we resize and crop that particular images to a fixed dimension like 32 plus 32. These are the sample images of different data sets. Like first one, we see that database calibration level 1. The left hand side images are affected images, like image contain diabetic retinopathy, and right hand side images contain non-affected, like no DR images. These are the sample of some images like database calibration level 1, database calibration level 0, drive dataset, and Methadone dataset. Dataset used for competitive study. In this, we basically use Aptos 19 dataset, and these are the some other datasets which we use these datasets for cross data verification and mixed data verification. These are the number of sample and class taken. Actually, database calibration level 0, level 1, steer, drive. These are the datasets these are the datasets have only categories. These are the datasets contain only 2 categories. Basically, we train our model on Aptos 19 dataset, and we to check the robustness of our model, we test our model on these diabetic calibration level 1, diabetic calibration level 0, steer, drive, and Methadone dataset. This is called cross dataset testing. Results. The proposed diabetic retinopathy detection net perform highest training accuracy of 94.11% with a validation accuracy of 80.59 for 5 class detection, as it is very as compared to the closest competitor with an accuracy of 75.83%. Finally, the testing information model offered associate degree of accuracy of 78%. That we used 304 Aptos images for testing our model and we achieved accuracy of 78%. The confusion matrix for class 5 is these are the confusion matrix of class. This is confusion matrix of class 5. Class 5 images of testing. We can see that some images are misclassified. Some images are misclassified because there are similarity between the images. Like we can easily identify that these images contain sign of DR and these images contain sign of DR. But there is a very less difference between mild and moderate and severe and polypharetic. So these are the misclassified images. This is the generality of diabetic retinopathy detection net on various data sets. We can see that we have total number of 6 data sets in which we train our model on Aptos 19 data set and test our model on the rest of the 5 data sets like paired Messidor, calibration level 1, level 0. And then after that, we use mixed data set results. So what is mixed data? Mixed data set is basically we take 30% of images on each data set and put that images on Aptos 19 for training and validation and rest 70% data and train our model and test our model on rest 70% of data and these are the testing accuracies of our model. Okay. Basically, it is a deep learning framework using capsule network for DR detection based on different image data sets. Achieves a very decent accuracy for 5 class as well as 2 class classification. Novel approach to introduce such type of DR classification. It may reduce time, cost, and effort significantly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gaurav, for the presentation. So now I am inviting all the audience to ask the queries if they have any. Okay, I think there is no queries from the audience side. So Gaurav, I have few questions for you. The first question is, what is the benefit you are getting from the capsule network, which you are not getting from the any other network? Why capsule network?
Yes, sir. Sir, basically, sir, CNN, convolution neural networks are translation invariance. Translation invariance means if a particular object is if we find a particular object inside an image, okay, then CNN detects, yeah, this object is present here. If we move that particular object, like if we move the particular object to left hand side or left bottom, then CNN detects, yeah, it is object, but it can't detect that it is previously this object is at this side and now this object is shifted towards left bottom or towards right or towards left. These things are missing in CNN and these things are basically present in capsule network. Actually, so basically in capsule network there are basically output depend upon the two things. First one is magnitude and second one is actually its output is basically a vector that it contain also magnitude and direction. Magnitude that this particular object is present in the particular region and direction like these are the features like orientation, angle, height, width, etc. So these things are missing in CNN.
Okay, I think in such cases when you have the multiple features like or in the form of vector,
yeah.
Then what can you say about the computation complexity of this method?
Sir, please repeat it.
What about the computational complexity of the method?
Sir, it is sir, basically in this we use primary caps and digicaps layers. Okay. So
Okay.
in this we use routing by agreement. So if you are using routing by agreement, then it's obvious that the complexity is bigger. Like if you increase the size of the images, in actually I have used 32 plus 32. If you are using 512 plus 512, then it takes more time for training. As you increase the number of like the number size of the images or other parameters like epoch, then it takes a very long time to train our model. This is the disadvantage of this model.
Okay, so last question from my side is when you show the database which you have used, there are some database where are very less number of images.
Yes, sir. Actually, yes, sir.
So my question is, how much data you have used, or you can say in the percentage wise, how much data you have used for training and how much you have used for further processing?
Actually, sir, our main focus on Aptos 19 dataset, in which I used 1265 images, in which D04 images are used for testing, and rest of the images are used now for training and validation. And these other datasets like diabetes calibration one that contain 89, 130, 160, 149. So actually, these actually like number of samples is equal to 89. Actually, originally it contains 89 images. Sir. Okay. Originally it contained 89 images. In second one, 130 images. There contain 161. Actually, there are actually not in this type of data set. There are various number of other eye diseases like cataract, background diabetic retinopathy. So I filtered images in which I only use if a patient is suffering from diabetes or if a patient is not suffering from diabetes.
Okay, Gaurav, thank you. That's all from my side. Okay, so thank you for the nice presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So now I would like to invite the presenter for the paper number 121, a dilated convolutional approach for inflammatory lesion detection using multi-scale input feature. So Gaurav, can you please stop sharing your screen?
Yes.
Yeah, sir.
Okay, sure. Yeah, Didi, you please continue.
Yeah, but I'm not having the sharing option. I think the host Gursimran need to make me the panel presenter for this particular presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Gursimran. I'll just take 1 minute. I hope it is visible to everyone.
Yeah, it is visible.
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav. A very good afternoon to one and all. I am Dr. Nidhi Goyal, and along with me, I have my co-presenter, Samarjeet Kaur. And we are going to present our paper ID 121. The topic is a dilated convolution approach for inflammatory lesion detection using multi-scale input feature fusion. So before I go with what the paper talks about, let me give 2 minutes to what basically the endoscopy is and what are we doing into this particular paper. So when we talk of endoscopy, this basically is a lesion detection paper. And in lesion detection, we are targeting the small bowel. Small bowel, as everyone is aware, we are basically targeting the internal body organs. And for a doctor, it is not visible. The internal parts, they're not visible through X-ray or CT scan in case of small bowel. So the conventional procedure is to do an endoscope. Now, when we talk about endoscope, there are two methods by which we can go for. One is a normal endoscope, which was in practice a few years back. Still, it is prevalent, but people go for a wireless capsule endoscopy. there are two endoscopy. One is the wired, the other one is the wireless. So when we talk about a wired endoscopy, it is basically a long wire. You can say it's a fiber kind of thing with a camera at the tip, and it is inserted into the human body. And that camera, the purpose of that camera is to take pictures of the internal body organs and pass it on to the doctor so that the analysis can be done. For the obvious reasons that it is an invasive procedure and very painful for the patient, wireless capsule endoscopy, a few years back it came into existence and is now being widely used, wherein it is, economically can be afforded by the patient because it's a wireless procedure. It is a little costly. And this wireless procedure, this takes a little longer time. Reason being, it is basically in the form of a capsule. The entire fiber and the camera is replaced by a capsule. The capsule is almost of the size of a Becasol capsule, a little higher than, a little larger than the Becasol capsule. We all are aware of a B complex or Becasol capsule. So the patient is supposed to swallow that capsule, and that capsule remains inside the patient body for 8 to 10 hours till the time it is secreted out of the body. And during those 8 to 10 hours, this capsule captures the pictures within the patient's body, and it wirelessly transmits to a recorder which is placed at the waist belt of the patient. It records, and you can understand it's a 10-hour capturing of video or images, and the doctor takes almost 3 to 4 hours to go through the entire video and find out what the abnormality is. We know that in India and maybe across the world, the patient to doctor ratio is not very good. So we cannot expect our governments to, our doctor to have 4 hours of time to invest to find out what the problem is. So the entire focus is on reducing this diagnosis time for the doctor so that at least some part is done. So what we are targeting is, we are not exactly targeting because we don't want the doctor to be out of the system completely. What we are targeting is, we will give a probability that out of these 10 hours video, these are certain 10 set of images which may have abnormality. Now it is the doctor to verify or validate the results. We will do our verification and validation through machine learning and deep learning. But obviously, in our X-ray and CT scan also, it is the doctor who manually verifies it, manually verifies the results given by the machine and then signs. So we don't want the doctor to be out of the system, but we want the machine learning part to be held. So, the way wired capsule endoscopy was there and then came the wireless. Similarly, when we talk about handling this problem through our technological advancements, we can say that earlier the entire procedure was being solved through machine learning. Since last almost 5 years till when the deep learning networks came into picture, the focus has shifted to deep learning part. But again, the problem with deep learning is it requires a lot of data. And in medical fraternity, when we are targeting any problem in medical fraternity, the problem is one, the data, the second one is annotations. Because we would like to have the ground truth, which image is normal and which image is not normal. So going deeper into this problem, we have pixel level annotations, image level annotations, block-based annotations. So people who are working into this, they can go and dig deep into this. Right now, I'll just concentrate on the manuscript that we have submitted to this conference. In this particular paper, we are talking about a lesion detection because when we say inside the body, we can have polyp, we can have ulcers, we can have lesions, and many more abnormalities. Most of them, they lead to bleeding in the internal body part. So lesion, for lesion also, the main is we will detect it through bleeding. And when we talk about lesion, it is a very broad category that I'm talking about. But when you talk to doctor, medical fraternity, they will inside the lesion also, they will categorize this lesion into 10 different kind of lesions. So right now we are just targeting lesion which will cover all the 10 categories. So coming back to deep learning part, the problem is medical images and the annotations. That is a problem. So in the paper, we have tried to solve that problem through augmentation, which many of us might be doing who are working in deep learning part. And for disease, we have targeted the lesion. Now, this is the presentation flow. This is the problem statement. So the problem statement is the medical images, its annotations, the availability of the data, doctor's expertise, and the objective is to reduce this 3 to 4 hours of doctor's time to maybe a few seconds or a few minutes. So that will be our contribution in the upcoming problems. Now, the presentation flow will have data. I'll show a few original images. This cropped and augmented images I'll cover. And then I'll have the block-based CNN framework, the architecture, the results, and the comparative analysis. One more thing I would like to cover over here is that why we choose CNN. At one hand, we are saying that we are short of data, medical data and its annotations. And at the same time, we all are aware that advancements are there in the form of transfer learning approaches, which don't require much of data. But there is a limitation with the transfer learning approach that you get pre-trained networks and you have the flexibility of modifying only the last few layers. While the CNN-based framework, you have the flexibility right from the scratch. So based on the problem in hand that we are handling, we can make our CNN right from the scratch. So that is why we have preferred CNN rather than going for any transfer learning approach. Now, these are basically the endoscopy images that the endoscope gives. We have the capsule endoscopy, wireless capsule endoscopy. We are not dealing with the wired one. So the first row, the top row indicates the wireless capsule endoscopy images. As you can see, the medical part is towards it's not exactly center, but maybe you can say the middle part of the image, and the borders are completely black. So when we give it to a deep convolution network, what happens is the borders are completely black and they're not actually giving any information to our network for training. It is just basically a non-informative part. So at the first outset, what we have done is we have cropped all these black borders. And after cropping these black borders, what comes to us is the image that are shown in the second row. So the second row shows the cropped images that we have. Now, when we have the data, so these are the ground truths which are visible. The first image shows the original image. The bottom row indicates the ground truth. For example, over here, it's a complete black image. The white part indicates that there is a problem over here. There is an abnormality over here. So if you correlate the second row with the first row, you will find where there is this white part, you have some yellow portion over here. Is my pointer visible to anyone?
Yeah, it is visible.
Yeah. So when we say that it is white, so that means there is an abnormality over here. So it will point out over here. When we say this is the abnormality, so here is the abnormality which is there in the original image and so on. So that's how we have the ground truths. And we have the ground truths, we have cropped the image. The next step is to enhance the data, because the data set that we have is basically having 1372 images, 1372 images, out of which, since we were targeting lesion images, so the lesion part was only 204 lesion frames, and there were 57 normal frames. The only option that we have was to augment the data. So for augmenting the data, the entire focus was not on to, was to keep the medical information intact. So while augmenting the data, we have not applied any kind of mathematical or image processing function that will remove the important medical information and may lead to misdiagnosis. So what we have done is we have taken a little bit of rotation, some brightness controls we have applied, a rotation shift, horizontal and vertical shift we have done. So for all these total of 261 images, we could perform 8 to 9 operations over there. For example, if we take brightness control, we can control the brightness in 5 different parameters, 5 kind of brightness we can give. Similarly, for rotation, we can rotate it by different angles by creating multiple images for a single abnormal or a normal images. This shows the augmented images for an input image. Again, this is the augmented image. From a single image, we could generate 7 different images, and one is the original. So per image, we could get 8 to 10 different distinct images. So this is the data that we dealt. In all, after augmentation, we could generate 8,000 images, out of which 6,000 we have used for training, 1,000 for validation, and 1,000 for testing part. So I believe this covers the main basic background of the paper. And here comes the block diagram of our CNN-based framework, wherein we are taking the input RGB image and we are cropping it. We can see that the input RGB image was of size 360 cross 360. But when we cropped it, it became 240 cross 240 by cropping the borders. And then we augmented the data. Now, the next block is the LUV conversion and the histogram equalization. Why did we convert it into a LUV image? Because our analysis, it is well researched in the paper, in the literature as well, that the different color spaces highlight different kind of abnormalities, or maybe, highlight different areas. So when we dealt with these kind of endoscopy images, we could analyze that the abnormalities which are there in the image, they are not that visible in RGB image the way it is there in the LUV color space. We have authenticated that using our feature maps as well. So we did LUV conversion and the histogram equalization. These two operations and the standardization, they were done on the fly. These were the on the fly operations. So we performed that and we gave it as input to our convolution neural network. It is not actually the CNN, it is a modified CNN wherein we have our primary branch and we have our 3 secondary branches. And these 3 secondary branches, when we talk of a primary branch, in the primary branch we have our CNN layers, the regular CNN layers that we use in a CNN network. But when we talk of our secondary branches, it has CNN layers, but the convolution operation is not done in the regular manner. It is done through a dilated convolution layer. So the first primary, the advantage of dilated convolution is that it is basically the first layer gives us certain features, and the second, third, and first, second, and third secondary branch, they have dilated convolution layer, and each layer extracts different features from our input image. That is why the paper is also named as multi-scale feature. So because every secondary branch is extracting different feature depending upon what kind of dilated convolution layer we have given. The first primary branch has one dilated convolution layer. The second secondary branch has one dilated convolution layer followed by a max spool layer. And similarly, the third layer has 2 dilated convolution layers followed by max pooling layer. So that's how they extract different features. Each layer is extracting different features from the input image. And once you have multiple features, at the end we have a concatenation layer which concatenates or fuses these features and give us the output, and the output is in the form of vector which says whether the probability, we have set the probability threshold as 0.5. So above and below it will, if the threshold is above, it will categorize it as abnormal, and if it is low, it will categorize it as a normal image. So this is our CNN-based framework, the complete block diagram, which indicates the pre-processing part, on-the-fly operation, and the CNN architecture. And this is basically the CNN architecture that was there with all dimensions and with all layers and branches. And these are the parametric values we have obtained. The test accuracy that we have got is the 97.9%. The precision recall values are pretty good. For abnormal, we have 0.99, recall is 0.96, F1 score is 0.98, sensitivity, specificity, again, they are very good, and AUC ROC curve indicates a value of 1. Now, I request my co-presenter Samarjit to please unmute and discuss the graphical representation of these results.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, Samarjit, you are audible.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. So on the screen, we have the precision recall curve. This we obtained on the test set, and we can see that we're getting pretty good area under curve. Precision recall curve we evaluate by looking at the area under curve values. The higher the area, closer to 1, the better the model is. The better true positive rate the model represents and lower false positive rate. So the scores are pretty good. Ma'am, can we have the next slide? This is the ROC curve. It basically represents the degree of differentiability of the classifier, how well the classifier can distinguish between the abnormal and normal class. And once again, higher the area under the curve, the better the model is. We can see that. Ma'am, can we go back just for a second? Yeah. So we can clearly see that the model touches the 0,1 coordinate on the top left corner. That is one positive rate of 1 and a false positive rate of 0, which is once again the ideal performance that we are aiming for. Ma'am, the next slide. The accuracy plot. So this plot was plotted over the number of epochs our model was trained on. So we trained the model for 100 epochs, and the orange curve represents the validation accuracy. At every epoch, both the training and validation accuracies were noted, and the curve was plotted in the end. So since both the curves are closely following each other, that symbolizes a good model that is neither overfitting nor underfitting. Because if a model overfits, it just means that the model is getting way too good at the training data, but not performing well on the unseen data, that is the validation data. But since we're getting closely following curves, that means that the model is generalizing well. On the next slide. This is the loss plot. It kind of follows the same trend. There are some spikes, and the spikes are because we used mini batch gradient descent because of memory constraints. Like we could not load the entire model into the memory at once. So using a batch size which is smaller than let's say 32 leads to these spikes. Ma'am, the next slide. So then we performed a comparative analysis, thorough comparative analysis, considering the work, the prior literature, prior work done in this very area, the other models proposed for convolution detection. We picked a certain criteria for comparison and compared based on that. And as it can be seen, we are sort of outperforming in terms of accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity. Except for the third column, we are outperforming all the other columns. And the third column, I would like to point out that they're using pre-trained models, namely Google LeanNet and AlexNet, to solve the same problem that we are solving, and they're getting a perfect score over there. The only drawback is they're not performing any sort of augmentation. So the scores that were obtained were obtained on very, very small data. So the scores the perfect scores are not very representative. On the other hand, in our proposed work, we augmented the data and obtained results on a huge test and validation set, which represented a lot of realistic variations that might occur in capsule endoscopy images. I would also like to point out that in the first and second columns, as it can be seen, the total number of images are appreciably high. The data set is very, very large, and they put in a lot of efforts to get such a huge data set. And but still, the performance scores are significantly less than ours, which is probably because they obviously had a very, very large data set. So we cannot compare our data set with theirs. But one thing which I'd like to point out is that they are using a model that is called single shot detector, which requires region level annotations for training. So region level annotations are pretty hard to obtain as far as medical data goes. That means that the doctor has to put in a lot of efforts to annotate the data, which is not always feasible. So instead of going for a graphical level in annotation, image level annotation is always preferred, so that the training and the data gathering process becomes easier. So this was the summary of the comparative analysis, and the conclusion was that we were outperforming almost all of them. All of the other works that we compared with, except for a few criteria. Even our testing time is appreciably good. And one thing I would like to point out is that the other papers did not mention the number of training parameters that their models had, the specific models had, but our CNN had order of magnitude less parameters than a general CNN that is used. So in terms of computational complexity, our model is a very, very lightweight one, which was due to the use of dilated convolution operation. Ma'am, the next slide, please. So this is the future work. We obviously need to validate the architecture on a larger data set. If we get a larger and, if possible, a real clinical data set. This was KIT data set, which was available publicly, and it did have a lot of variations, but it's always good to test on a data set that has real patient data. So and improving the architecture to increase the accuracy further. We're still a few notches behind the perfect score, and again obtaining data from hospitals for better training and validation. So to conclude, we proposed a novel CNN model that is a multi-branch network, which uses dilated convolution operations to preserve the input context, because the input context is lost as we go down the CNN layers. So we simply perform dilated convolution on the input and merge it at different levels of the primary branch to retain the input context. Also, side benefit of using dilated convolution is that we can use multiple size kernels, larger size kernels, in fact, without increasing the training parameters. Because dilated convolution, the moment we use dilated convolution operation, it does not add to the number of parameters as much as a convolution operation does. So dilated convolution made it possible for us to extract multi-scale features without making the model heavier and heavier. So that was it from my side. Thank you very much.
And these are the references that we have referred during our work. I thank you all. I and Samarjit, we thank you all, the panelists and the attendees listening to us. And we are ready for any question and answer that you have with you.
Okay, so thank you, Nidhi, and thank you, Samarjit. So any queries from the audience side? I think there is no queries from the audience. So with this note, I will thank Dr. Nidhi Goyal and Samarjit for such a nice presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gaurav. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, now I would like to invite Dr. Sanoj Kumar to present the paper 123, a robust medical image watermarking framework based on SVD and D in integer DCT domain. Yeah, so over to you, Sanoj. Sanoj, okay. Sanoj, are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gaurav. Thank you so much. You are much pretty audible. And first of all, I want to share my screen. My screen is visible to all of you?
Yes, it is visible. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. And first of all, good afternoon to all of you. And here I'm going to present a robust medical image watermarking framework based on SVD and DE, differential evaluation algorithm in integer DCT domain. Okay, it is. So these are the outlines of my presentation today. Introduction of the problem, state scaling curve, singular value decomposition, integer discrete cosine transform, differentiation algorithm, purpose framework, experimental result and discussion, and then conclusion with along with the references. So first of all, digital watermarking. So basically, digital watermarking contains three basic categories, that is video watermarking, audio watermarking, and images watermark. Contains digital images as well medical images and spectral images also. But my focus for this work is only for medical images. So that is the block diagram of the problem. So basically, we have a signal, or it may be a two-dimensional image, which we have to be sent to through a secure channel to the other end. So it has basically three parts. One is in the first part we have a embedding process, and in the middle part we have the attacking options, and the third we have the extraction process for that one. So suppose we have an image and we want to send some hidden information in that image. So first of all, we embedding that part, and then we send that image to the insecure channel where many attackers can attack on the function or on the image. If our scheme is robust, so we cannot lose that information which we have in the embedding process, and in the receiver end we extract that information. So with that note, first we have a space filling curve. First we scrambled our image or watermark in a manner so that the hidden information should not be visible to the attackers. So for that category, I have used the space filling curve. It is a continuous scanning of the whole image starting from the pixel from 1. We have taken an example here, as you can see here. So first if suppose we are at the position 1, when we go on to the 4 in the right direction at 1, 2, then we go down 1, that is 2, 2, and then we go forward and down and forward down. In that manner, we have to scanning every pixel of the image just once only. And when we have the elements below the principal diagonal, suppose we have the 2, and then first we go down, then forward, down and forward. That is the process. And here I have taken the example of a medical image, MRI image is here. And when you're using step spelling curve, that is the information in, you can see in the middle of the part, which you can see it is completely hidden information when we are using the state spelling curve. And again, if you are taking the inverse of the same state spelling curve, we get back the information. And second, the main thing we have used, that is single value decomposition. It decomposes any image into three parts, means three matrix USV. U and V both are orthonormal matrices here that can be obtained from the image I itself. And S is the diagonal matrix which can be obtained by the singular values of the image I, and which follow the rules. Here the singular values of the matrix X, sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma R, has the rule that sigma 1 is larger than sigma 2 and which is larger than sigma 3 and so on. Yes, now integer discrete cosine transform. Generally, when we are using any transform, we have, when we using any transform, we can lose some information. Meaning is that if you have an image and you are taking the transform like discrete transform, so when we have the quantity in the integer form and we are taking the discrete cosine transform, we have the floating point values there. So here we can lose some values here. So when such a case is here, we have to avoid the float point multiplication and of course lossless compression. Generally integer discrete cosine transform or other integer transform can be used, and it has a very good property that it is floating point multiplication avoidable, and second, it is lossless compression, means it transform integer to integers. So that's why we use integer cosine transform for this one, and the detail for further of integer discrete cosine transform can be obtained in the paper reference number 12, and this is the very good paper for integer discrete cosine transform and first algorithm, that's published by Zhang in 2001. So I'm not going to in the detail for that one also. Now to obtain the very good optimized parameters, we use differential evaluation algorithm. It is a mathematical optimization algorithm which is very simple to apply. Basically, it contains three main components. One is mutation, crossover, and selection. Differential algorithm starts for the some population with NP, and in the mutation process, we have two things. One is our initial population, and another is the destination population. So mutation process start by with selecting three different population, which are certainly different from the destination populations. In the crossover, we have to find out a trial, you can say rattles, which is fitting the between the initial population with the destination population, and this trial rattles can be defined in such a way that their selection is very, very close to the destination, and this whole process can be obtained in the selection process. So that is the proposed framework. First of all, we have a host medical image I of size n cross n, and we divide the whole image into 8 blocks. Then we apply integer DCT on each block and obtain a matrix B. Then we applied SVD on the matrix B and we obtain three matrix USV such that B equals to USV transpose. Then we have to scramble the watermark by state spelling curve and then embedding that watermark by modifying the singular values in the forming of S1 equals to S plus alpha into W. Alpha here is itself a diagonal matrix which can be obtained by with the help of differential algorithms. And again we apply the SVD on matrix S1 to obtain the modified singular values in the form of the matrix SW. Now we again obtain the image including the watermark BW by the process VSW and V transport. Here SW is the matrix which is modified by the singular values. And again we perform the inverse discrete cosine transform for the matrix B using these modified discrete integer values to obtain the final watermark image IW. And on the extraction process, first we perform the step 1 of the embedding process to obtain the distorted watermark image to obtain the matrix BW, and then follow the step 2 to partition the matrix B into 3 parts U, S, and V. So here SW is the watermark singular values, U and V are the modified orthonormal vectors. Again we have to calculate S1 star as we did in the embedding process also. And finally we extract the leftly distorted shuffle watermark as S1 star minus S divided by alpha. And again perform the inverse step spelling for we got the extracted watermark W from the image. So for experimental results, we have taken 3 images. First one is the MRI of the brain, second X-ray image, and the third one is CT scan. And we have used 2 watermarks for them. One is the logo and another is the text watermark. And the size of the host images are 250 cross 256, and the size of the watermarks are 32 cross 32. So these are the extracted, these are the images including the watermark images also. So these are the watermark images. The first row contains the watermark image along using a logo watermark, and the second row contains the watermark image using the text watermarks. And the parameters which are used in the differential evolution algorithm are scaling factor 0.5, crossover rate is 0.5, and the population size we have taken 10, and the maximum generation we have taken is 100. Then to check the robustness and the possibility of the proposed algorithm, we calculate 2 metrics. One is PSNR, peak signal rising ratio, and another one is the normalized cross correlation. So in the PSNR here, IRS is the original image, and I star RS is the watermark image. And in NCC, WR is the original watermark, and W star is the extracted watermark. And here are the results. In the first column, you can see NCC is very much close to 1, while the PSNR is varying from 50.72 to 50.94. Basically, it is very close to 55 to 56 for the logo watermark. And for the text watermarks, the PSNR is much high. It is around 58 for MRI image, 56 for X-ray image, and 55.8 around for CT scan images. And again, to check the performance of the proposed algorithm against the various attacks we apply here, so many attacks, we apply cropping attack, gamma correction, Gaussian noise, histogram equalization, rotating, JPG compression, average filtering, median filtering, rotating, and the translations. And here we have just presented the result for one image, that is MRI image for the brain in case of the logo watermark, and second for the text watermark. And the same thing, NCC and PSNR, we have computed for all the 3 images, and the results are summarized in the table here. So these are the NCC values for the obtained watermarks here. And this is the for the text watermarks. In rotation, we did not get the so much good result as compared to other watermarks. For cropping also, we did not get the good result for both the watermarks. Either it is a logo watermark or it is a text watermark. So this is the just one thing we can say where we have to look out in much closer form how we can getting these results. So we will look out in the future also. Our algorithm can be robust while we applying so many attacks on the purpose algorithm. So that is from my side. And of course, in the form of conclusion, we apply integer discrete quotient along SVD to obtain the multiple scaling factors, and that is totally depends on the problems. Initially, we did not define the parameters, and due to the advantage of differential algorithms, the multiple optimal scaling factors are obtained. Okay, thank you so much. That is from my side.
Okay, thank you so much. So now I would like to request all the audience to ask the queries if they have. So any query from the audience side? Okay, so Sunuj, I have a very quick question for you.
Yes, tell me, sir.
Yeah, so I think in the last result where you have compared the different images, the performance of different images. So the performance, if you look at about this CR, the attack CR, the MRI image is the metric comes out to 0.82, and for rest of the thing is 0.62 and 0.69. But in rest of the attacks, I think the results are the consistent throughout. So what is the basic reason for this change or significant change in CR attack?
Actually, sir, we apply the cropping attack on the left hand side of the image around 1/4. So we have lost so many information. If we have an image and 1/4 part, we have cropping. So that's why I thought our algorithm is not working on that particular way. We have lost 1/4 of the image. Means we have the result here for only 3/4 image only. So that is the reason.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you to all of you.
Okay, so with this presentation, we come to an end for this particular workshop. For this particular big data for healthcare. So I thank all the participants, all the presenters, and all the authors who have contributed towards this particular workshop and have presented their work in a very nice manner. So in this particular session, we have the three papers which are presented. One paper, first paper is the robust medical image watermarking framework based on SVD and DE in the integer DC domain. The other paper is on the DRD-NET, diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy using capsule network. And the last paper was the dilated convolution approach for inflammatory lesion detection using the multi-scale input feature fusion. So with this note, I just thank all the presenters and all the attendees. Okay, so with this note, I'm just calling off this particular workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.